This is a message preached by Dr. S.M. Davis in 1991, titled, How to Put Your Marriage Back Together.
Over a period of time, a pastor is asked a lot of different questions. But I was asked a question just this week that blessed and excited and delighted my heart tremendously. And it seemed like after I was asked it, I couldn't get it off my mind. I built my whole message this morning around the question that I was asked. The question was this: Pastor, can you tell me how I can put my marriage back together? How's that for a question? Far too many people in our day are asking the wrong questions. They're asking, how can I get out of this mess? How can I get rid of my old lady? How can I get rid of that old man? How can we get the quickest, cheapest, cleanest divorce? Well, I want you to look in the Bible with me this morning as I try to answer the question, beginning with Proverbs chapter 14 on the subject, how to put your marriage back together. Proverbs chapter 14, look first at verse 1. Every wise woman buildeth her house, but the foolish plucketh it down with her hands. It says, the wise woman builds her house, the foolish woman tears it apart. There's an incredible thought in that verse. Everyone here today is either building up or tearing down their own home. Now look over to chapter 24, please. Proverbs 24, verse 3 says, through wisdom is an house builded. I stop talking about that physical frame house you living in. It's talking about the home that's inside. And it says through wisdom, which is God's way of looking at things, through wisdom is an house building. And by understanding it is established. And by knowledge shall the chambers be filled, that's the rooms, be filled with all precious and pleasant riches. And can I remind you that when the Bible talks about riches, it is often not talking about financial riches. And in this case, I think it is talking about those tremendous riches of a wonderful relationship between husband and wife and parents and children. And through wisdom you build a house. By understanding and knowledge will you fill that house with the precious and pleasant riches of wonderful human relationships. Now turn to 1 Corinthians chapter 7. I believe 1 Corinthians is the longest book in the New Testament. The Apostle Paul is helping the thinking of the Christians in the church at Corinth, answering their questions. And in 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 10, he says, and unto the married I command, yet not I, but the Lord. In other words, he said, I'm giving this, but the Lord also said this, let not the wife depart from her husband. Did you hear that? Boys, a lot of people need to hear that in our day. Let not the wife depart from her husband, but and if she depart, let her remain unmarried or be reconciled to her husband. And let not the husband put away his wife. Paul says the thing that couples having problems ought to be doing is putting their marriage back together. Now look at verse 27. Art thou bound unto a wife? Seek not to be loosed. Art thou loose from a wife? Seek not a wife. But and if thou marry, thou hast not sinned. And if a virgin marry, she hath not sinned. Nevertheless, now watch this. Nevertheless, such shall have trouble in the flesh. But I spare you. He says, I want to promise you, as sure as you get married, you're going to have problems. Let me tell you, the worst reason for anybody to get a divorce is because they've had problems. Because God already told us everybody gets married is going to have problems. Young people, listen to me. If you don't want to have problems, don't get married. I didn't say marriage wasn't wonderful. I didn't say it wasn't delightful. I didn't say it wasn't for most people. I said, if you get married, you're going to have problems. He said, I would spare you the problems of getting married, but he said, it's all right to get married. It's good. It's blessed. It's wonderful. And he also said, if you have problems, don't seek another mate. Work out the problems with the one you've got. The scripture's very plain, isn't it? Wise people build their homes. Foolish people rip them apart. In other words, homes do not just fall apart. Did you ever hear that phrase? So-and-so's home fell apart. No. Nobody's home falls apart. someone tears their home apart. Not an outside force, but an inside force. Not an outside party, but an inside party tears apart a home. That also means this, that those who have the power to tear homes apart also have the power to build those homes. Now, if your home is in trouble today, you need to listen to this message. If your home is not in trouble, then you'll want to listen carefully to make sure it doesn't get in trouble. Because your home could be in trouble just like anybody else's is. Every husband and wife has the potential for building their relationship or ripping apart their relationship. So you ought to listen carefully this morning if your home not in trouble to make sure it doesn't get that way. Or you may need to help somebody else's home that is in trouble, because there's not a couple here this morning who is not likely to run into somebody out there in the world this week whose home is in trouble that needs help. How can you put your marriage back together? Number one, first thought is this. I'm going to dangle my outline right out there in front of you. I want you to write it down and hold on to it. Number one is, if you want to put your home back together, almost invariably everybody I've ever talked to that needed to put their home back together needed to start by correcting their thinking. Correct your thinking. You want to put your home back together? You want to help somebody else? The first thing you'll do is you'll have to help them correct their thinking. What did he say in Proverbs 24:3? Through wisdom is an house builded, by understanding it is established, and by knowledge shall it be filled with precious and pleasant riches. Now, wisdom is thinking like God thinks. And as you know, too many people don't do that in relation to their home and their marriage. Now, up front, you ought to realize if you're thinking like most people in the world think, number one, you're probably not thinking right about marriage. And number two, you're probably also not thinking right about what to do about your marriage problems. I said, if you're thinking like the world thinks, you're not thinking right about marriage, and you're not thinking right about what to do about your marriage problems. Now, the thinking of the world in relation to marriage problems is usually negative and terminal. What do I mean? I mean the average person having marital problems who talks to a friend usually hears the friend tell them something like this: you know, you're being treated badly and you ought to get a divorce. Am I right? Now get this. You'll probably never solve your problems until you discard divorce as an option and decide you're going to work out your problems no matter what. I mean, you're going to have to correct your thinking because the world has got you thinking wrong. The TV set says if you're having problems, I mean, you can find fulfillment by hopping around with somebody else. That's what the TV set tells you. 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 13 commands, gird up the loins of your mind. Discover those areas where your mind is sagging. Am I talking to somebody here with a saggy brain? Discover those areas where your mind is sagging and gird it up. Push it back in place. When you find out your mind is starting to sag toward the area of divorce, you gird that up. You get to where you don't let yourself think that way. A lady said to Dr. Ed Weed, who has a tremendous book on the home and marriage, and a wife said to him, I had to take a stand on this matter of outside influence. Everyone has been anxious to give me advice about my marriage. I refuse to discuss it with people who hold an unbiblical viewpoint, or people who try to turn me against my husband, or people who make me feel sorry for myself and encourage weakness in me. I cannot afford to be around worldly friends anymore. They tear me down. They tear my husband down. They may mean well, but they are so misguided. I want to be with people who will stand with me and support me when I might falter. She's saying I'm correcting my thinking. Philippians chapter 2, verse 5 says, let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus. In other words, Christian, you ought not think like the world. You better start thinking like Jesus thought. How did Jesus think in relation to marriage? Turn back to Matthew chapter 19 and let's see how Jesus thought in relation to marriage. The Pharisees came to Jesus, and of course they were divided over marriage, but they all thought divorce was all right. Every one of the Pharisees thought divorce was fine. And in verse 3, they said, is it lawful for a man to put away his wife for every cause? In other words, Lord, is it all right for a person to get divorced for any reason whatsoever? Now, that's what you've got in our day with no-fault divorce. No fault means I don't find any fault in you and you don't find any fault in me, and we just run in there and get a divorce. Boy, it's one of the most ungodly things to ever hit America. They asked Jesus, is it all right to get a divorce for just any reason whatsoever? Now, what's the mind of Jesus say when you're asked what are the grounds for divorce? He said, have you not read that he which made them at the beginning made them male and female and said, and he just quotes Genesis, for this cause shall a man leave father and mother and shall cleave. It means stick like super glue. It means have an inseparable bond. Cleave to his wife, and they twain shall be, how many fleshes? One. Can I tell you something? One is the smallest indivisible unit. You cannot divide one flesh without terrible consequences. They should be one flesh. Wherefore they are no more twain or two, but one flesh. What therefore God hath joined together, let not man put asunder. Do everything in your power to fight against divorce. Now that's the thinking of Jesus. Notice this. The mind of the Pharisees looked for the grounds for divorce, while the mind of Christ looked upon the one flesh relationship. People in our day foolishly say, well, you know, marriage is just a ceremony, or marriage is just a piece of paper. If marriage were only a piece of paper, Adam and Eve were never married. They didn't have any marriage license. They had the greatest marriage license of all. They had God's permission and God's officiation. What was the thing that made them married? And what is the thing? Listen to me. What is the thing that makes two people today married? You know what people think in our day? If two people have lived together long enough, then they're married. But biblically, that is not true. Two people are not married biblically, according to Proverbs 2:17, Malachi chapter 2, other passages that use the word. Two people are not married biblically until a covenant is established. A covenant is not a contract. A contract is between me and thee. A covenant is something established between thee, me, and God. A contract you can back out of. That's the reason, or you can find a loophole in. A contract is one of those things that you do because you might not trust that other person. You want to make sure everything's covered. All the grounds are covered. A covenant says, doesn't matter what happens, we're going to stick it out. For better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and health, till death do us part. Another lady told Ed Wheat, I'm not standing by my marriage anymore on the basis of what the outcome will be. People urge me to dump my husband, give up on him because he's made my life miserable. They tell me I deserve someone better, that I wouldn't have any trouble finding someone else to love me. My answer is that marriage is sacred. Marriage is permanent. I am committed by my marriage vows. I am one flesh with my husband, and then I really shock them. I tell them, even if there is no happy ending for our marriage, I will not regret the stand I have taken. I will know that I made the right decision and followed the only course possible for me. I will have done all that I could. My trust is not in what I am doing. It is in God and His Word. I'm going to keep on obeying Him in my marriage. I'll leave the results with Him. I am at peace with that. That's good. Amen. A proper marriage vow does not say, for better, for richer in health, I'll love you for the sake of your wealth. But if you get worse or poorer or sick, I'm going to look for a cuter chick. A proper marriage vow says, essentially, no matter what, we stay together till death do us part. Amen. That's the covenant. And that's what God is talking about. And you'll never have your home like it ought to be unless you correct your thinking. Listen, there are folks sitting here this morning that your home is shaky right now, and the reason it's shaky is because you've begun to consider divorce. You've begun to have the mind of the Pharisees. And you need to change that thinking and correct it and get back to the way Jesus thought about the home and marriage. Number 2, what can you do to put your marriage back together? Confess your failures. Confess your failures. No one ever rebuilt a home while blaming their mate for all their problems. Examine yourself. Certainly there may be more fault on one side of a relationship than there is on the other. But you know what I've discovered? There's virtually always some fault on both sides. Good marriages, hear me, good marriages are not built by two people who never do anything wrong. Good marriages are built by people who aren't too proud to admit where they're wrong, when they're wrong, and try to make it right. There are 3 words that every married person here ought to learn to say regularly. Are you ready for these? I'm sorry, honey. You say, I never had to say that. It wasn't because you didn't need to, it's because you was too stinking proud to then. Because good marriages aren't made out of perfect people. They're made out of 2 people who have a sinful nature, who have learned to let God take control and learn every once in a while to realize they're at fault and say, sorry, honey. Say that with me. I'm sorry, honey. Let's say it again. Some of y'all need to practice that real bad. You ready? I'm sorry, honey. Now, look at it. Those of you that are married, look at your mate and say it. I'll look at mine, all right? You look at yours and just look at them and say, I'm sorry, honey. Now, was that all that hard? In fact, before pride comes destruction, but God gives grace to the humble. You know why some homes are stronger? It's not because they never do anything wrong, and neither one of them ever say, I'm sorry. The reason some marriages are strong is because they admit their faults, they say, I'm sorry, and they make things right. 1 John 1:9 gives the basic principle, if we confess our sins. Now, certainly there's got to be forgiveness in the marriage, but I want to tell you, there needs to be confession. If we confess, he can forgive. And if you will confess, your mate is more likely to be able to forgive as well. Number 3, you want to put your home back together? Continue walking with God. Obviously, I'm talking mainly to Christians here, but it's amazing to me. Listen, continue walking with God. It's amazing to me that people having marriage problems would drop out of church, but they do all the time. Happens all the time. Somebody starts having problems in their marriage. I think it's pride. I think that's what it is. I think they're ashamed to show up in church, and it could be the gossipy, nosy nature of a lot of other people too. Because they want to, what's your problem? Where's your husband? Where's your wife? What's going on? The gossipy, nosy nature of a lot of people. But let me tell you, if you ever ought to be in church, it's when you need God's help. Now, we all need God's help every day, but at certain times we need it worse than ever. And you know, there are people who desperately need this message. Is probably the people who need this message the worst aren't here today. I mean, there are backsliders who are having trouble at home who need this message, but they're not here. Continue walking with God. I mean, when you start having problems, start reading your Bible more, not less. Hang around godly Christian friends who will encourage you, not discourage you. The church is not a mausoleum for saints. The church is a hospital for sinners. I had a fellow say to me, well, Brother Davis, I just don't want to go to church and then go out during the week and cuss and all that. And I said, well, I'm glad you feel that way. But I said, I want to tell you, the church is for sinners. Just come on down. I got a preacher friend in North Carolina who on the front of his sign, he has one of these traditional looking church signs in front, brick and glass, and the name of the church on it. And he got this idea, and right on top of that church sign, in big letters, he put these words, for sinners only. He had a couple of people got mad at him, left the church because he put it up there, but he had somebody who went riding by his church one day and saw that sign and went in the building and said, is the pastor here? Could I talk to him? He said, I left my home about 45 minutes ago, and honestly, I was looking for a place to commit suicide. I was trying to figure out a way to do it where nobody had ever figured it out. And I was trying to go somewhere where maybe nobody would know about me. And he said, I saw that sign said for sinners only. He said, that qualifies me. Can you help me? That's what the church is all about. If you're here lost today, the purpose of this service is give you a chance to get saved. You don't have to walk out of here that way. If you're here burdened down with the guilt of sin, you don't have to leave with that guilt. You can be saved. You can be forgiven. If you're not saved, get saved. If you're not right with God, get right with God. No home was ever all it was meant to be apart from the help of God. Number 4, you want to put your marriage back together like it ought to be? Everybody needs this one. Communicate. Communicate. The ideal picture of the husband-wife relationship. I can't wait to preach about this tonight. The ideal picture of the husband-wife relationship is found in Ephesians chapter 5. And the illustration of what a husband-wife relationship should be is not by comparing to the neighbor down the street. And let me tell you, I think my wife and I have a wonderful relationship. I didn't say it's perfect. I said it's wonderful. I think she'd agree with you. She's grinning at me anyway. And I really don't know anybody has a better relationship than we do. I really don't. But the ideal relationship for you to pattern your marriage after is not the pastor and his wife. The ideal relationship for you to pattern your marriage after is Christ and the church. Have you ever considered the incredible communication between Christ and the church? He gave us a whole book to tell us all about himself and his actions and his thoughts and his way and his will. Whole book. That's not all. Soon as we get saved, he puts the Holy Spirit inside of us to talk to us 24 hours a day, 7 days a week if we'll listen. But that wasn't the only communication is always two-way street, right? He also says, come unto me, all you that labor and heavy laden, I'll give you rest. He says, come talk to me, pray to me anytime. You can come to the Lord anytime, day or night, about any problem you've got, and he won't laugh at you and say, that's too small. Don't talk to me. You can come to the Lord anytime, day or night, and he'll say, yeah, I wanted to hear you. I was glad you came. I was wanting to hear that. I want to talk to you about that. Anytime, anything. Communication. That's it. Full communication between heaven and earth all the time. And that's the way it's supposed to be between husband and wife. Husband sat in the living room with his hand on the TV knob and said, hey, Beverly, is there anything you want to say before football season starts? I wouldn't blame that wife if she prayed for the TV to blow up and then put feet to her prayers. In fact, hey, this is true. I read this week about a wife who was so distressed over trying to talk to her husband about the problems they were having with their daughter. She had tried over and over, and it was always him glued to the tube. And finally, she got so distressed and so disgusted, she walked in between him and the TV set and took a hammer and smashed it. Boom. Do you know what that turkey did? Without saying a word, he got up, went into another room, locked the door, and turned on the little TV set in the other room. And I want to tell you, those folks' problem is not TV set. Their problem is communication. They're not communicating. I know another fellow who walked in and announced, honey, I bought a new car today. He never even told his wife he was looking. And you fellas, none of y'all ever did anything like that, did you? He should have been communicating. And you know what I thought when I found that out? What would you be willing to bet that she had a list of 10 things that they couldn't afford to do? Don't you think that probably had a list of about 10 or 20 things that he had told her, honey, we just can't afford to do those, but he could walk in and say, we just bought a new car. Healing of a relationship begins with communication. Healing continues with communication. The building of a relationship takes place with communication. And the day, watch me, listen to me, don't turn me off. The day you stop communicating is the day you start tearing your home down. Maybe you have, but I have never seen a couple who were really communicating trying to get a divorce. Never. Not a one. Because communication itself brings about closeness and caring. You cannot communicate well with someone without caring for them and drawing close to them. How do you put your marriage back together? Correct your thinking, confess your failures, continue walking with God, communicate. I like this one. Number 5, cast fuel on the fire of marital love. Cast fuel on the fire of marital love. We have a wood stove at our house. We burn, I don't know how many cords of wood this winter. I discovered an incredible thing. If I didn't keep throwing wood on the fire would eventually go out. Isn't that amazing? Did you know that? Did you know if you don't keep throwing wood on the fire will go out? Did you know that? Now, let me tell you why marriages are breaking up in our day. Listen to it. It's not just TV, though that doesn't help a troubled home at all. It's not just financial problems. Do you hear me? I said it's not financial problems. I said it's not financial problems that bust couples up. Most financial problems come because couples are trying to find happiness in things instead of relationships. Now, if you just stop and think, you'll realize you and I were not meant to find happiness in things. We're meant to find happiness in relationships of life. Why are couples breaking up? Not just sex problems. Sexual problems is more a symptom than a cause. Most marriages die because of one word: neglect. Neglect. Now, let me picture for you typically what happens in our day, in our society. Boy meets girl. Girl smiles. Boy sighs. And spontaneous combustion takes place. A fire is lit. Now, what we say is, they're in love. What we really mean is, their hormones are exciting. True love is deeper than hormones. In fact, it's not the hormones that counts, it's the heart that counts. True love is more than emotion. True love is commitment. Ephesians 5:25 is a command. Husbands, love your wives. Now, you can't always command your emotions. But fellas, if you will, you know what God is saying? If you will, there's not a one of us here this morning who can't love our wives. You say, well, you just don't know what an old biddy she is. No, but I know what an old rooster you are. And you can love her if you choose to do so. You say, but my hormones aren't excited anymore. Since when were hormones supposed to hold a marriage together for 60 years? Commitment's what holds a marriage together. When you see a couple that's been happily married for 50 years, 60 years, what, Regine, your grandparents, almost 70 years now, this year, 70 years. And they are as happy as two pigs in a barn lot. I mean, they're just as happy as anybody you've ever seen in your life. I want to tell you, the reason they're happy after 70 years of marriage is not because they've had excited hormones 24 hours a day for all those years. It's because their commitment to one another calls them, watch me, their commitment calls them to keep throwing fuel in the marriage fire to keep love burning bright. Now, there's some logs you ought to be throwing on the fire of marriage to keep that fire burning bright. The log of kindness, the log of praise and adoration and reverence, the log of courtesy, the log of communication. Keep throwing it on the fire, keep it burning bright. The log of a home-cooked meal every once in a while. The log of opening the car door for your wife. The log of a night out occasionally. The log of an anniversary gift. The log of a birthday card. The log of intimate times together. The log of touching. The log of kissing. Yeah. And when I talk about kissing, I'm not talking about the kind of little pecks on the cheek that Yasser Arafat and Saddam Hussein give each other. That's not the right kind of log on the marriage fire. Song of Solomon chapter 1 verse 2 says, let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth. You know where these high heel shoes came from, don't you? They were invented by a lady who'd been kissed on the forehead too many times. Throw some logs on the fire and keep the marriage fire burning bright. What am I talking about? I'm talking about every once in a while you ought to call home from work, fellas, and just say, honey, I love you. You are the sweetest thing in the world. You say, well, that's not true. She's sour. Reason she's sour is because you don't ever tell her she's sweet. The log of prayer together. Keep the fire burning bright. When's the last time you held hands and prayed together? When's the last time you had family devotions, you and your wife? The log of opening the car door for your wife. The log of a smile instead of a frown. The log of a pecan pie. The log of chocolate chip cookies. The log of a flower. The log of a romantic evening together. The log of reading the Bible together. Now you watch. You check. I've listed half of these logs thrown on the fire, all right? You check anybody in here that's having marriage problems, they hadn't done half of this half I've given them. No, they hadn't. The log of a little perfume. The log of some deodorant and mouthwash. Did you know love can even smell good? The log of biscuits and gravy for breakfast. The log of compliments. The log of acceptance. Throw it in the fire. Accept your mate just like they are. Fat, skinny, big nose, little nose, forehead bald, middle head bald, whole head bald, buck teeth, bad teeth, beautiful teeth, brown teeth, or bridges instead of teeth. Accept your mate just like they are. The log of acceptance. Honey, I love you like you are. You don't have to change a thing. Somebody gave me this right before service. Some wag drew this. Some wag's passing it around the church, too. I won't tell you who. Can you see that? That's supposed to be the wife before marriage. That's supposed to be the wife after marriage. We all laugh, but that didn't help his marriage at all. In fact, I think some old goat probably drew that. Acceptance. Fellas, accept her. There was a time when it didn't matter that she was so skinny that every time she got a run in her hose, her leg would fall out. You remember that? I mean, you loved her anyhow. And ladies, there was a time when it didn't matter he was so fat that at first glance you thought a concrete mixer was coming. That's all right. Acceptance. Throw some acceptance on the fire. You say, well, he's added a few pounds. Well, have you looked in the mirror? You say, well, she's turning gray. Have you looked in the mirror? You say, well, they got wrinkles. Have you looked in the mirror? You say, well, they don't look like I did when I married them. It don't matter. Accept them like they are. Acceptance is a big... I found out, I didn't know anything about burning wood until we got out in the country. And I found out there's certain woods you can throw on the fire, and it'll burn for a while to be going quick. Cherry wood and pine, things like that. Then there's, if you want something really burn, big oak log, that'll burn for a while. Now, if you want something burning even hotter than that, throw a big locust log on the fire. And if you want something that'll really fire and pop while it's burning, throw a big hedge log on the fire. It'll just about run you out of the room. Now, I'm going to tell you a hedge log, fellas, a hedge log you can throw on the fire is romance. What I mean, fellas, you and I don't realize it, but our wives are incurable romantics. God made them that way. They love all that little stuff that you and I don't think anything about. Christmas time rolls around. You know what I'd like to do? I mean, you brought them home in a perfectly good paper bag. Tape that thing shut and throw it under the tree. You know what my wife likes to do? She actually spends my money to buy this expensive paper that's not as good a paper as the bag it came in. And then she spends my money to buy ribbons and decorations and dollies, and she puts them up all over the house. Incredible. You know what I found out? Cheap price to pay to keep the marriage fire burning. A date, a box of candy, a corsage, a night away at a motel. You say, well, brother, you don't understand. I'm not like that. I'm not either. But when it starts getting cold around your house, you may wish you'd have thrown a log on that fire. You see that spontaneous combustion of those hormones back out, that wasn't meant to burn the marriage fire bright forever. Throw another log on the fire. Opening the car door for your wife. Pecan pie for your husband. A rose. A shopping trip. A box of candy. A dress for her. An outfit you wear, ma'am, just for him. Ham and beans and cornbread. A trip together. Opening the car door for your wife. Another log to throw on the fire is saying I'm sorry when you need to, or saying I forgive you, or saying I love you more every day. Well, some logs you need to be throwing on the fire. The owner of Tracers Company of America Incorporated, a New York agency that specializes in finding lost persons, says that more wives than ever are running away from home. Not because they found new lovers, but because they're bored. And they feel there has to be more to life than playing handmaid to an ungrateful, unappreciative husband who never praises them or thanks them for anything they do. You know what that husband needed to do? He needed to start throwing some logs on the fire. You know what she needed to do? She needed to start throwing some logs on the fire. Do you know there's an interesting thing about a fire? The fire doesn't care whether I threw the log on it or my wife threw the log on it. It'll burn. And if your mate's not throwing enough logs on, maybe you need to throw a few more in. Maybe it won't be long. They'll be standing over there with you throwing a few in too. And the fire can burn then. Fires can also be put out, you know. Throw a little cold water of selfishness on the fire and see what it does. Throw a little cold water of comparing your mate to somebody else and see what it does for the fire. Throw a little cold water of bossiness or nagging on the fire and see what that does. Throw a little cold water of anger on the fire. Throw a little cold water of your career being more important than your mate so you don't ever have time to spend together. Throw a little cold water of impatience on the fire, see what it does for it. Throw a little cold water of harsh words or fantasizing about somebody other than your mate. Throw the cold water of being critical, the cold water of cold attitudes, the cold water of neglect, the cold water of not looking or smelling nice for each other, the cold water of talking lightly about unfaithfulness or divorce. Someone has wisely said this, listen, marriage is an edifice that must be rebuilt every day. Keep that fire burning listen, if you're going to keep a marriage fire burning, you're going to have to throw some logs on the fire every day. Inevitably, when I sit out in my office and talk to a couple who are having marriage problems, you know what I find out? I find out neither one of them are stoking the fire. You expect spontaneous combustion to build a 60-year fire, and it's not going to do it. You got to keep feeding that fire. Correct your thinking, confess your failures, continue with God, communicate, cast fuel on the fire. And number 6, change where change is needed. Change where change is needed. Quit saying you can't change. I've said some things today that people have sat right in this auditorium while I've been preaching and said to yourself, I can't do that. All over this auditorium, there have been people sitting here this morning saying to yourself, well, all the men might do that, but I can't do that. Or all the women can do that, but I can't do that. I can't. I just can't get along with my wife. I just can't give up the affair I'm having. My husband and I just can't communicate. I just can't open my wife's car door. But that's a lot of work, isn't it? Amen. I just can't fix pecan pies. Well, how about apple pies? Well, but don't you know you just can't teach an old dog new tricks. We're not talking about old dogs. We're talking about people. People created in the image of God. People who once they have repented of their sin and trusted Jesus Christ as their Savior have the living Lord of glory who can do anything living inside of them. Quit saying I can't and tell the truth. Say I won't. Because you can. Could I remind you of some scriptures? Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through Christ which strengthens me. 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 9, my grace is sufficient for thee, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. You say, I can't, I'm too weak. Well, that's where the Lord takes over and does a wonderful job for you. Ephesians 3:14 and 16, for this cause I bow my knees unto the Father, that he would grant you to be strengthened with might by his Spirit in the inner man. I want to tell you, those who are Christians have an outside resource that the world doesn't have. We have the Lord living inside our heart. We can do what we ought to. We can change. Are you hearing me? Your home can change. You can change. Your life can change. You can change. Luke 1:37. With God, nothing shall be impossible. Nothing. Now, what's it going to be when you walk out here? Are you going to walk out here saying, well, I listened to it again. He preached along them lines before, but that's not me. I'm just not going to do anything about that. Yeah, have you looked at your marriage fire lately? I mean, have you checked the stove? Have you looked inside? Have you seen you've only got a few embers left burning in there? Are you going to sit around and say you can't throw any logs on that fire until that fire is so gone, so out, that nothing will start it again, it seems like? Or are you going to say, I'm alive and Jesus is living in me and I can.